Okay, let's go. Oh, we did have a tree falling. Oh, wow. Huh. Is it a branch or a whole tree? I think it's a branch. Wow. Cool. It makes algae in the sun, reaching up to the sun, the sedge grass. I love how algae is connected to grass. And the elk, which is stamina. It's like, I've regained a lot of my stamina last few days. I've been stalked violently by a family of females, actually, for the last week or so. And before that, that week I was sexually assaulted about half a dozen other times. So it's been an interesting week. I don't know if I have to just get used to it as a permanent part of my life, or, and you could ask yourself things that victims always ask, like, what is it about me? And just keep going, see what the day offers. I think it should be a good day. A lot of the times if you're dealing with violence, one thing I do, and I can't always do it, but it's an option. And of course, I think most people, well, not all people, I mean, some people may or may not think of this. It's, whether you have it or not, it doesn't matter. It's just, it can seem quite obvious. It may be obvious to you and not other people. And there's nothing stupid about not being obvious. It's just, like, violence really, it's just a lot to deal with. And is that if I have enough things happen someplace, and maybe you have also other reasons to want to not go there, is just stop going to that place. Sometimes I find, and whether or not you need to do that, I find that violence is site-specific. I will find there are certain places I can walk and tell you, this happened here, and this happened here, and this happened here. Like, I had 4 encounters, 5 encounters with females around that one creek in Langton Creek, and all of which are aberrant, right? Every single one of them aberrant. And I'm quite capable of being disturbed by the aberrations. Because a lot of people, a lot of victims, more likely take it personally, the aberrations of others. In some sense, it feels as though it's directed at you. It is an insult to human intelligence, and you can feel that. But also, they're aberrant. It's the only way they can be. It's not necessarily personal, but I wouldn't tell someone not to feel personal about it. There are plenty of people deal with aberrant people all the time. Cocktail waitresses, people that work in service industries. And you start to see, that. But also, there are people who are aberrant. And you can come to see everyone who seems abnormal as aberrant, and they're not. They may be dealing with someone who's aberrant, So it's a little more complicated. And people tend to protect their group, their tribe. And then it becomes like either or, who's wrong and who's right. Well, conflict isn't always about that. That's the Christianized sense of conflict means someone's good and someone's evil. Well, good people can do evil things, right? You may know someone's like, oh, but they're a good person, but they do evil things. Everyone who does evil things is a good person. It doesn't really matter whether they're a good or bad person. You could say beyond whether or not you think their character is scrupulous or principled is whether or not they're capable of doing bad things. Because of whatever reason, right? People like to think that they're good or not so bad because they can't think of any reason why they'd be bad. But regardless of whether you can think of a reason, some people just are. The reasons are out there, but you just don't know what they are. And the fact that you don't know doesn't stop them from being evil, right? It's just basic logic. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, it's just that we tend to gloss over violence because we have to think of someone as either a violent criminal or a really angelic person trying to do the best they can, just like you. And the fact is that people, for all kinds of reasons, certainly victimization and bad choices and drug abuse and alcohol, just being exposed to unwieldy amounts of trauma that no one ever seems to understand. And every single fucking political and economic thought philosophy is just shitting down their throats. Because it doesn't take into account their voices, which is the problem to begin with. If we just included everyone's voices, we wouldn't have violence. Right? So the idea that we live in a free society is ridiculous. As long as there's high rates of crime, society is not free. It's that simple. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, you can make other simple arguments, but that's one of them. Right? But if you want to feel free, that's good. If you feel you're free in your striations of pure human biology, then absolutely. I don't need to take that away from someone. You and I have to live in a world where, as free as we might be able to be or feel we are, it's not necessarily a free world. Certainly not for everyone. And maybe not for anyone as much as they'd like, as long as there's a certain amount of crime. It's not just something that happens. It's because people grow up and they don't have a voice in what's going on, which becomes particularly poignant when what's going on, if it violates their voice, it's probably going to violate a lot more than that. And there's nothing for those people to remedy that situation. Because by the time someone's violating their children's voices, right, that's what they have to do to survive because of all the other shit they've dealt with. So nobody wants to give up their survival when their survival has been wired into their brain based on being violated by their mothers in the womb. You know what I mean? So mothers program their children to be violent. I met this one woman, she's a sexual predator. She eventually told me and showed me she worked with a few other women who were sexual predators. She had a lot of sexual predators coming in and out of her store, females and males, okay? I studied these people for a while. This woman, you just sort of, like, I'm not trying to be disingenuous with them. It's like, I do try to take people at face value. And she's talking about how she's into children, child psychology, and talking about how crime rates go up when there's C-sections. That's how she sees the relationship in crime rates. Right? But she's eliminated the male part. She's violent towards men. It has nothing to do with cesarean. It's something to do with her mother's womb. Right? And now we're talking about the mother's womb. Not to personalize and say, if you're a woman and you have a womb, you're a bad person. It's just that the womb belongs to us all. It's where we all start. I have a claim on it because I came from there. You know, a fish couldn't say to another fish, oh, you can't talk about the fucking ocean. You know, because that's my ocean you're talking about. It's like, yes, your womb is yours, my womb is mine. We all have different ideas about women and mothers for lots of different reasons. But violence is passed through the womb. It's not genetic. It's passed to the fetus through a combination of the mother's coping systems and the kind of people and environment she's chosen or been forced to be around. Right? There's lots of room there for compassion. There's lots of room there to grow a better world and for everyone to continue to increase their happiness and not to decrease it by every step you take. But to think of the womb as a place where no violence can pass through is dangerously, morbidly naive, and it flies in the face of everything we know about violence and all of history. It's a delusion, right? And it's an important delusion if you're talking to your mother, talking about women, and you're not talking about this subject. Of course you wouldn't be like, oh, but women's wombs are all violent. We know that for sure. It's not always appropriate to put that up, but the womb, the human womb is a violent place, no doubt about it. No one talks about that, but the womb has not just slowly become the most violent place. It's been the most violent place there is on earth for 1,000 years. That's why everybody is the way it is. It's based on where we come from. It's why people accept all kinds of creepy shit about the world, because you've had to learn to incorporate creepy shit while you were building your brainstem and trying to be the spirit that you wanted to be in the temple of your flesh and blood, the temple of your spirit. All that sacred stuff is still there, but it's being defiled by the mother, the father, and the society they effectively represent to you. Right? Did you feel that by the time you were 5, you knew enough about the world? What about 10? What about 20? Did you feel you knew enough about the world to understand suffering or diseases in your family? Right? What about 50? Right? If everyone understands so much about suffering, why don't you tell me about it? Tell me about your family. And when people tell me about their family and all they say are good things, and I wouldn't disrespect someone, but you're not telling me about reality. You're telling me what's called the dum-dum story. And I'm not going to disrespect you for that. It's just like, it's a nice dum-dum story. I'm glad you like your dum-dum story. But no human family is non-pathological. We all come from a dangerous place known as the womb. That's why women have been able to kill almost 50 million fetuses in the last 50 years. Okay? And they have a license to do that. And there are good reasons for them to do that. But there's no good reason for them to disconnect from the spirit of their children and consult with them and explain to them what they're doing, right? Which I'm sure the spirit knows. The worst part isn't even the abortion. It's the women who decide to keep their children after thinking about murdering them. If you ever think about having an abortion, then do it. Never bring that child into the world once you think about aborting them. Never, never, never. You go get the abortion. Just go get it. Once you start thinking about killing your child, do not bring them into the world. Give them up to someone who likes life, who wants to be a mother, because you have no maternal instinct whatsoever, right? Or you're living in a dangerous environment and you don't want to bring your child into the world, and it's something you have to consider, in which case you should probably do it, right? Absolutely, right? It's a hard decision. No woman should have to do that. There are things women can do to avoid it, and there's things women can't do to avoid it, like if they're raped, right? It's a complex subject, right? You need to bring your A game. Okay. Wow. Making good time. Yeah, that crap was really good. Wow. So if you can't love someone in the physical world, how can you love God, an invisible being who you can't see? And yet the Psalms say that God is nature, or nature is the best way to understand this God. Fuck you. You see, you know where you made your mistake, Christian authors? You left a man like me to fall in love with Mother Nature, and to fall in love with his mother, connected to Mother Nature and his father, and to restore his family pride and joy. Fuck you, biblical authors. Fuck you, Christians. And fuck you, all you cunty women of the world. You won't get me down. And the fact is that a lot of women are not ready to enter that conversation. Do what you want with your woman, right? Kill all the babies you want. You have a license to kill, right? Right? Say, hey, I had to kill my child because I was raped. I had to kill my child. I had to terminate my pregnancy, which is a euphemism for murder, right? Right? And it's a shame you have to murder your own child. It is. But make that decision and own it. Talk to them. Tell them what you have to do. Tell them your decision, right? And let them know maybe you'll try again in the future, right? Because that spirit is already there. It's already around you, right? They love you. And you're saying, I'm too scared to bring you into the world. I feel too undermined as a woman. I don't think it's safe for you or me. So I'm going to have to kill you. They should have that written down in a script in abortion clinics, and then perform the abortion, right? Do it with some heart. Don't just do it like you're taking out some rotten thing out of your womb. Because then what you're doing is you're defiling your womb. How are you going to ever have other children? You've put an uncontested murder into the fabric of yourselves. You're just a baby killer at that point. You've dissociated from what you're doing. You've passed the rape on to your child. You've converted it into murder. And somehow people say 2 wrongs don't make a right. And go ahead, have the abortion. Just talk to the spirit first. Why deny them a voice? And if one day you wake up one night and they say, I love you, I still want to be your mother despite everything you've told me, I still want to be your child, then let them have a say, because those spirits are quite developed, right? And they'll work with you. And if you keep that conversation going, you can show the world something completely beautiful. So there is another route. But it's not just up to you. It's between you and your child. You can have that conversation, right? There's love between you. There's a purity there that this world cannot defy. But if you ignore it, well, that's up to you. The first woman who raped me had a child, blamed me for it. Okay, a man who'd never had sex, who was basically, physically, probably 13 years old, right? Broke into my home and raped me, okay? I never found out if she went through with the abortion she said she was going to get. It's like she had no feeling for this child whatsoever, no feelings for herself. What an ignorant person. And yet she was an engineer. She didn't seem to know how babies were made. She had a shaved pussy. She was clearly promiscuous. She was married. Right? She had lots of money. Right? She didn't need any money from me. Right? She wasn't paying me any rent to stay banged up in my apartment for 4 months. Right? Abusing me verbally. Using all of my resources, forcing me to help them to apply to film school with some shitty film that she paid 2 actors to come and do, which was ridiculous. Right? Didn't want to know that I'd made films. Never learned a single thing about me at all the entire time. Would just yell at me in my own house and tell me what a bad person I was. Right? Right? When she raped me, the phrenium on my penis started bleeding. You know what she did after? She got in the bath to wash herself because she thought I was going to infect her. Right? The point is that she wasn't properly aroused, as with other women who raped me and tried to get pregnant by me. Right? They have no idea about their bodies. They have no idea what sex is. They have no idea. And then they accuse you of things after. Right? They're just living in a delusional, psychotic world. They're disgusting human beings, really. But again, what does compassion dictate? Do people do this because they have alternatives? It's given me a lot of knowledge about how women behave and what goes on in their minds and how they think about things. So I don't trust them. Right? All women are sick. Right? The industrial world has poisoned our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, poisoned them plenty, poisoned them long time. So I can say things like, estrogen poisoning, female gossip, right? Women get together and talk and knit. That's something they're supposed to do, right? But what do they talk about? What conclusions do they come to, right? Nothing. No one has ever produced one single legitimate philosophical or ethical work based on the conversations of women. Ever. Ever. Because women have erased the possibility that women could ever do anything wrong. And that there's anything, they're willing to say the world is wrong, men are wrong, things are wrong, but they can't see anything wrong with them. And they're the primary instruments of how evil is done. That's why it's called evil. Which goes back to a lie starting in our mother's womb, that it is a suitable place for a child to occupy in terms of the type of conditions that are required by the development of the human brain inside a female womb. Hi. Hi! There's a dog. Oh! Oh! Hi! It's a black and white dog. Finally saw me and smelled me. Finally the dog sees me. I've had a lot of black and white dogs I noticed come across my path ever since I met that young native girl. Yeah. I think she's a lot younger than I thought she was. There are some things for some women that don't need to be said, but for a lot of women they do. People like my mother had no idea how to find an appropriate mate and to have that they could have children with. My father didn't know that either. Neither of them had any idea. He just went out, found someone, drank, had sex, and maybe married them. And that was love. It didn't have to be anything real. It just was what people called it. And once you had the house and the job and everything, that made it real. The children made it real. And it was your job as a child to make that real for them while they were trying to make life real to you. And without even thinking about it, or about any qualifications, a mother and father represent the beautiful reality of nature to us. This beautiful administration. And then, since there's no real knowledge about what that means, it just evaporates. And the parents don't know what they've lost, but except that it's related to what they lost and what their children lose. And everyone's supposed to pretend that nothing's lost. It's like, wow. To someone who's a writer, a speaker, like I am, a poet, it's like, why is there any other subject in the world? Why isn't everyone talking about this? Right? There's so much pathology in the world. I can walk into a coffee shop and find two upper middle class people, male or female, who are pathological. You know? Hey. Oh, it's nice to have a good crap in the woods. That's exactly where I wanted to crap. It's like my body waited until it's like, we're down. I even put on some fresh underwear today. It's pretty good, eh? I haven't had a shower in over a week. And yet I don't stink. I have a bath every day. I don't use soap though. Yeah. I knew this woman. She was close to my age. She ended up sexually assaulting me a couple times. I lived with her. She owned a strata, townhouse complex. And, no, sorry, not the complex, just a home and a townhouse. And in a strata. And she started walking, you know, and she'd come back sweating. And she would stink. My God, she stank. It was like something had died. I was like, oh my God, I wanted to plug my nose. I'm like, I could never fuck this ugly thing. Right? I walk every day, hours and hours. I never stink like that. You know, one time in the summer I was walking, and I got into this trainee's car that I knew, and he's like, you should take a shower, you smell a little ripe. I'm like, okay. But the weird part is this guy always smelled. He lived in a trailer, always smelled like mold, always stank. I'm like, it's so interesting. Anyway, but he was right, or she, or whatever her name was, and but she was a sociopath, and so I learned that, you know, people with gender dysphoria, it extends to the moral functions of the brain. So like from your sex and your upper brain development are connected. So really, what you really want to do with your sex is become moral, instead of like just having good sex. It shouldn't be 50 Shades of Grey. It's like, tell us what is right and wrong to you, and how do we discriminate as much as we need to in a world where the powers of discrimination are going to find no end to the task which were set before them, because no one discriminates anything. There are no morals to this world. Might makes right, money makes right. People just survive, stay in their own world. No one's really advancing anything. This guy Steffi Molyneux was on YouTube for whatever 10 years, called himself a philosopher. No one thinks he's much of a philosopher anymore. And people are coming out of the woods just saying, this guy never taught me a single fucking thing. He seemed to think he was a psychologist and a philosopher, never had any training. He just picked up ideas quickly enough that he could sound like he knew more than he did, compared to people who really know what they're talking about. And I just considered him a shill the last 5 years. I didn't listen to him anymore because I still enjoy listening to his voice. Like if he's just a dude that wants to talk, I think that's fine. In fact, sometimes I think he was a really good person for people who called in to talk to. He would say women who had babies, say, you've really got to own up to why you're a single mother. Just be honest, right? You had sex with someone you couldn't keep around, right? Do you want to repeat that pattern, or do you want to own up to it? And he was the first man I ever heard say that to a woman. And she had never heard that before. The idea that she had to be accountable without someone like being misogynistic to her. Just saying, just like anyone else, you might want to think about why you ended up in this position. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. People end up in all kinds of positions. Why do women open their vaginas to someone who can impregnate them, who they don't want to keep around, they want to discard, they don't respect, they don't know them, and they can just blame the man every time? It's amazing. Like, why would you want to stick your dick in them? My dick is not going anywhere, these vaginas. The last week or two, I have passed some relatively attractive females. But that's it, They always give off a bit of a weird energy. Like, this one woman's little dog was barking like crazy at me, and she said, oh, she's my protector. I'm like, really? What is she protecting you from? And she's just making a casual sort of witty statement. I didn't take it badly. I just think a lot of women think that way about dogs. They clearly are overly excited and anxious. Because animals, I could say to her, well, I've had bears come up to me and sniff me with less trouble than your tiny little dog. So what are they fucking protecting you from? I've had cougars look me right in the fucking eye, right? And not do a fucking thing. Like, nature doesn't hate me. Nature doesn't growl at me. Why does your little dog? Right? It's not protecting you. Your dog is protecting me from you and telling me you're crazy. Right? That's all that's happening. Right? So women project a lot. Women project a lot because if you have no self-awareness, you have no sense of modesty, it's easier just to say, oh, my dog's protecting me. Protection is like 9/10 of the law for women. It's like, if I need protection, then I must be right. Wow, so she says she needs protection from me. Really? It's sort of like the opposite of what's going on. You understand? Yeah. You don't want to be in environments, and there are a lot of them, where men are not protected and women are. Because what happens is women will bitch to the end of time that they don't feel protected enough. Because guess what, ladies? If you don't protect men as much as women, your protection doesn't fucking matter. You're going to protect your way out of ever having a father for your children. Right? You're going to protect yourself from ever experiencing the realities of life on earth, which, as painful as they are also some of the most beautiful things that reveal the very purpose of being a human being to begin with, right? It's not true that you can't solve the world's problems. It's got the sol right in it. Just put the sol back in your life. Come on. There's nothing you've had to deal with that the sun doesn't have to deal with. People are adding their labors to the sun every day. People always like to say bad things about the sun. They say, oh, the sun's changed color. It used to be yellow. And it's like, no, children see the yellow aura of the sun. They're not stupid, which is the root and the crown chakra. Right? Think about how connected children are, right? The first color I really tranced out on as a child was yellow. Yellow, yellow, yellow. You notice in green environments, the green is always touched by yellow. And the second chakra is green. And the third chakra is blue. So you've already got this entire cosmology in your first three chakras. And the New Age weirdos, they say that your root chakra is red. And it's maybe buried in the earth somewhere. Right? But then you'd have to be dead because your red chakra is your head chakra. The head is red. That's why you read with your head, because you read a book, right? You used your mind, right? But if you never use your own mind, nothing ever makes sense. You just babble, babble, babble. You just listen to what people tell you. You never work things out for yourself. It doesn't matter what you learn. You have to work everything out for yourself. That's the problem with the school system. People learn math, which is basically taught as though to the stupidest common denominator. So they never learn the meaning of math. They never learn how to make their own deductions. They never learn the spirit of math. No one really learns to do math. They just learn how to use a system of signs in the most broken down way. They don't teach you the spirit of math. The most my professors would tell me is like, oh, Newton and Leibniz discovered calculus at the same time, which is bullshit, obviously. And they're both magicians, members of the Babylon Society. Newton was consulted in how far to put the sun away from the earth, considering they don't want you to know that the sun revolves around the earth and it's only about 40 miles away. Relative to your position, it could be thousands of miles away, but it's not millions of miles away. That's why you have crepuscular rays. You'll notice that they're 45-degree angle often coming through the trees, right? The ends of which were probably about 50 miles across. That's because the sun's only 50 miles away. Okay. You can discover it for yourself. It's right there, right in front of you. Just basic math. Made easy. The sun is only about 50 miles away from, like, above you, if it was right above your head. 40, 50 miles away. It's electric, and the electric emanations also emanate so-called radiation, right? Radioactive. It's not nuclear, it's not dying, it's eternal. It's never going anywhere, hey? Isn't that weird? Something about nature that's eternal, but we don't even think about it. Hey, where do you think all these trees come from? Take your world, remove your industrial training, and think about the fact that the sun is eternal. Hey? Wow, that's pretty amazing. The eternal sun. E, turn, tear, null, right? E represents your immune system. Tear and nullify it. Because you'll see in these words, in what is eternal, is a disgraceful composite word in the standard of science which have been apportioned to us. Eat, tear, and null. Eat, tear, or tear, null. Right? Eat, torture, and nullify. Eat, torture, and nullify. The Son, like the Father, is made a human sacrifice. Food, scapegoat, gaslighting. These are the common aspects of how women behave towards men. And men behave towards men upon little, if little, female provocation. At some point, right? So, here's that. I caught a man sexually stalking me at a health food store, and they never fired him. They fired other people, just not him. Because the owner is a stalker. Yeah. Whose two-year-old boy got leukemia. The same man whom I interviewed said that he didn't believe children had the power of reason. Interesting. Then how do they have 20 fingers and toes? Reason is the very spirit of human biology. So you see the fracture in the human mind, right? The fracture in the heavens we've created in common assumptions about the nature of reality and the nature of the sun. They've been insulting the sun. The Hebrew tradition, nothing against Jews, but unknown probably to most Jews, is the only tradition that considers the sun evil to look at, right? The only tradition where an ancient word, Satan, is considered a bad thing. considered the deceiver, the betrayer, the enemy. And Satan actually means the truth of our Heavenly Mother and Father in earth and heaven. The truth of the soundness of all human society is contained in those bull's horns. The energy of the cow and the bull, which is sacrifice. Jesus is the bull. It's a bull sacrifice, right? And it's a bunch of bullshit as well, isn't it? Cain and Abel, cannibal, right? It's all about the death and scapegoating of the Father, right? So God really is counting coup on all the fathers in the world, and you're supposed to love that. You're supposed to love that Santa replaces your father. So your father goes to work, and then you get a train set from Santa, and you're like, thanks, Santa. It's like, right? It's the beginnings of replacing the father, right? With this fat pedophile who slides down your chimney and eats your food that your mother usually lays out for him, right? Might as well be the father's testicles. And during these Saturnalian periods, children are encouraged to be excited, filled with sugar, and excitement attends lowered inhibitions. Fascinating, eh? They learn to party, right? Christmas is an orgy of childhood emotions, right? But you'll notice, like, it's not really about the presents. It's about being together as a family. So then why do you need fucking Santa? Of all of nature and all the wonders of the earth, what the fuck is this fat, ugly piece of shit have anything to do with it? Who, interesting enough, sees you when you're sleeping, sees you when you're awake, kind of like a god. He knows whether you've been bad or good. Wow. He's interested in all of the behavior of all the children in the world and looks in on them and knows everything about them, right? Does he see me masturbating? You know? It's like, oh, I'll get you a dildo, Rebecca. I know you need one. I've been watching you play with yourself. You know? Disgusting. And adults get into this, and it's creepy. They become perverts, emulating these characters, Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus. I've seen them. They seem like psychos. I've come into like a little Christmas Milner Garden thing. I come in on the 20th of December, and they're like, you walk through all these fairy lights, and I'm like, have you been bad or good? And I just turned around and ignored them. It's like, the creepiness on my skin was unimaginable. It's like, you fucking weirdos. White people, of course. You and your weird demonic Santa. Right? You got demonic Jesus, demonic Santa, demonic God, right? And what does Santa do? He rings in the height of the monetary world. What would Christmas be without spending gobs of money? It keeps some businesses afloat, right? So he's basically an economic stimulus, right? Based on scapegoating the father and learning to teach children, to groom children, to lose their inhibitions, which is what school does as well, right? Breaking down the family, taking children away from their homes. Hi, I'm a good guy. Let's go on that theory. Let's allow myself to think I'm a good person. Right? It's possible. I could be a good person. Could be a smart man. There's no one to confirm that, of course. Least of all the listener. But nonetheless, I do have some little entitlement, I think, to think of myself as a decent gentleman and a scholar. I'm certainly no threat to anybody. I'm not into any utopian philosophies. You know, I like the gritty, hard edge of the world. I'd rather deal with what it is than what I want it to be. And yet, I still think, if only because we have to find some path to happiness, whether we're delusional or not. We cannot escape that delusion. We want to be happy, even if the world does not provide for it in any but the most delusional sense or pretext. Right? I could do without the pretext, but if I can feel the reality of the violence of the world, I can feel the reality of happiness. Both must be true. I can feel relief from suffering, which to me is a lot of what happiness is. Relief from suffering. Now, some people like to say, you create your own suffering, delusions, misthoughts, ego. From the beginning, the boat of the sun floats upon the boat of the moon. The seeds of heaven fall to the earth, the womb of heaven. Heaven is filled with the seed of the earth, and heaven also is the womb of the earth. The Father and the Mother in heaven and earth, and the power is complete and effulgent. And always happiness will be possible for all time. For the nature of time itself is for things to grow and come to their fullness and ripen in wisdom and power and strength and peace. And to move and flow with its very concourse, its very reality made flesh through all the measures of the heavens and the earth. Lovely.